morning, and welcome to the USS Arizona Live Dive 2025. My name is John Hopkins, and I'm currently wearing the Mark V diving dress. This is the equipment that was used to salvage a lot of what was damaged here during the attack on December 7th, 1941. The equipment weighs approximately 190 pounds, 54-pound helmet, 80-pound plus weight belt, and the rest of the equipment rounds out the weight load. As you can see here off to my right, we have some cables that would have carried electrical power throughout the ship from this deck up to the next deck. During the salvage, the superstructure was cut off and the cables were left hanging. They still remain here today. And with that, I hope you all enjoy the rest of USS Arizona Live Dive for 2025.
So I graduated number 2 in my class. They said, well, Cale, you have your choice of worldwide assignment. Worldwide assignment to a boy from Illinois, where is that? And I remembered there's a little island somewhere about 2,000 miles off the United States called the Territory of Hawaii. And here they have beautiful girls there with hair clear down to their back. I hear even some of them have grass skirts and live in grass shacks. Said, hell, send me to Pearl Harbor.
When the young men stationed at the naval base of Pearl Harbor awoke on the morning of Sunday, December 7th, 1941, they had no way of knowing that their lives would forever change before the day's end. Shortly after daybreak, Japanese forces flew into one of the United States' most vital Navy outposts on the Pacific Ocean. On their arrival, a 90-minute sucker punch left American forces reeling and over 2,400 military personnel and civilians dead. The USS Arizona was one of 8 U.S. battleships docked at Pearl Harbor, home to roughly 1,400 men, including a father and son, and 38 sets of brothers. The ship measured 600 feet in length, weighed over 37,000 tons, and boasted 4 turrets housing the ship's 14-inch guns. It was one of the most impressive battleships in the Pacific Fleet. The attack, starting shortly before 8 a.m., caught the crew of the USS Arizona completely unprepared, as breakfast and morning activities were just commencing. And while the shipwreck provides a material glimpse into the attack, it is the voice of the survivors who best tell the tale.
Arizona had taken a bomb from up 12,000 feet of 1,500 pounds, and it come down and hit the Arizona, went down 2, 3, 4 steel decks into the ammunition locker and blew up with a giant explosion. We were in blackout conditions in those days. Nobody could have any lights on their houses or anything. The only light you could see on the whole island was the burning of the Arizona. Well, it burned for 2.5 days.
Sailors and Marines valiantly fought the fires, while the chaos reigned around them. But the Arizona could not be saved. The ship quickly flooded and settled on the muddy bottom of Pearl Harbor. As the fire rose from the water, military personnel struggled to douse the hellish flames and save their fallen comrades.
But I spent the next 4 hours out there in the water, swimming underwater most of the time because the diesel had leaked out of the ships and caught fire. So I'd have to swim underwater, break water, see somebody to be picked up, go back down under and pick them up. In 4 hours, I picked up only 46 people. Some of them were dead already. Some were badly wounded, some badly burned, some were just tired because they got blown off the ship or jumped off and had to be taken ashore. I think about the first thing we saw in the Arizona was a bunch of ashes blowing off of the ship. Well, a lot of the men had burned right down to the deck. There were just little piles of ashes because the ship burned so long, so hot. Many of the men were in ashes behind the big guns on the ship. So I just sort of shed a few tears.
In the immediate aftermath of the attack, the Arizona faced two possible fates. One, advocated by Admiral Chester Nimitz, who would play a key role in World War II as commander of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, was that the ship be removed from the harbor in an attempt to erase the horrors of the day and to eliminate the risk debris posed to other Navy ships. Alternatively, there were those, like Admiral Arthur Radford, who believed that the ship's remains honored fallen American heroes and served as a reminder to remain ever vigilant. Admiral Radford planted an American flag on the ship's mast to create the first informal memorial. Today, the Arizona's resting place is commemorated by the iconic USS Arizona Monument, constructed over the skeletal remains of the ship in 1962.
I never realized that there was 1,177 men aboard the Arizona. And since I only took off 109, I knew there were other men on the ship, but I never thought about how many it happened to be. Well, when I got out there this time, they had the big white wall with all of the names of the men and Navy men and the Marines that were still on the ship. And I said, my God, I left some 900 men aboard the ship.
And I know down below on the ship, there's 900. Their spirit is there about that ship. I feel it.
When they have the ceremony on December the 7th each year, all the tears go down my back, and I find myself right back out there.
All right, you guys are live.
Hello everybody, welcome to the live stream on the deck of the USS Arizona. My name is Andrew Tanberg. I'm the Park Dive Officer here at Pearl Harbor National Memorial. Behind the camera is Brett Seymour, and he works for the Submerged Research Center, and he's been kind enough to come out and join us here today. Before we start looking at what's below us, let's talk about what's above us very quickly. We're currently right off the side of the USS Arizona Memorial. If you've ever visited the USS Arizona Memorial and looked down into the waters facing the bow of the ship, you would be able to see our location right now. Today, we're going to explore the deck of the Arizona as we make our way to the number 1 turret, and I think we'll find a lot of really cool things along the way. But let's start where we are right now. These tiles that you see below me are tiles of the galley on the USS Arizona. And if you're like me, when you first arrived at Pearl Harbor and you heard the word galley, you might be asking, what is a galley? Well, the galley is the kitchen. So this entire area was the kitchen for the USS Arizona and all of the men that served aboard. This kitchen worked for breakfast, lunch, and dinner 7 days a week to feed the over 1,500 sailors and Marines on board. As we make our way over here in this direction to this large metal rectangle, this is actually the base of one of 3 ovens used to cook all of those meals. And we'll swim along all 3 of these oven bases here today. As we swim along, you'll still notice pieces of the tile sticking through the sediment and being pretty well preserved. This is the base of oven number 2. And this is the base of oven number 1. Now, it is a little misleading in its current state because it gives the impression that the kitchen was just out in the open. Well, that's obviously wasn't the case. This entire area was enclosed inside of what they called the super tower. And it is just that tower that you see on top of battleships. After the USS Arizona sank, a very large salvage operation began to take as much of the metal and material and weaponry that they could and use it elsewhere in the war effort. Along this line here, this small wall, is actually where they cut the metal away, and the entire tower they took off. This right here would have been a door that allowed sailors to go in and out of the kitchen. We're going to continue our journey and see what else we find on the deck of the Arizona. And while we make this short stretch, the conditions today are pretty normal. You get about 10 feet on average of visibility. On a good day, you might get up to 15 feet. As you see emerging in front of us here, it looks like we have a bottle and some bowls. These bottles and bowls have been here since the Arizona sank. And that would be 84 years ago this year. This cereal bowl is in remarkably good condition. And sailors may have been having cereal out of it the day of the attack. You can still see the manufacturing printing on the bottom. These other bowls are also in very good condition, but they are fused to the deck of the Arizona. I see part of a plate up ahead here, and what appears to be a fork. Wow, you can still see the shiny pieces on the fork. You also notice that it has a tag on it. The National Park Service tagged all of these artifacts and their locations on the ship. Now I know of one really cool thing in this cubby over here that I was shown during my first couple of dives on the USS Arizona. It's actually one of my favorite bottles. And the reason is because of its very unique bright blue color. I don't know what this bottle was used for, so if any of you history buffs out there have a guess, feel free to let me know. I'm always very curious. I see a few more things over here right in front of us. But before we talk about them, let's talk about these creatures real quick that are on the deck of the Arizona. These are a type of sea cucumber. And I'm not a marine biologist and I don't pretend to be, but my understanding is that these guys are also known as reef janitors. They help keep the bottom of the marine ecosystem nice and clean. We're going to see a lot of these on our dive today. And I can tell you when I first saw them, from a distance I thought they were rebar or just any other piece of metal. And I'll tell you, I was kind of surprised when I got close to one and it started to move. We've got a green bottle here. And we also have the sole, the rubber sole of a boot. Fused to the deck of the Arizona as well. But you can see the heel here going around to the toes there. Very cool that it's still here after all of this time. Now, I know we've just started our dive here on the USS Arizona today, but we've already seen so many interesting things. I'd like to open it up and see if you guys have any questions. Topside, are there any questions in the chat?
We have one. So who can dive on the Arizona?
Who can dive on the USS Arizona? That is a really good question. So the National Park Service doesn't allow any recreational diving on the USS Arizona. Every dive on the Arizona is purposeful. So in order to do it, there needs to be some sort of mission involved. When we dive on the Arizona, we'll be out here cleaning up trash, or doing maintenance on the buoys, or just watching the ship and observing it as it deteriorates so we can take care of it the best way we can. It's a really good question.
We have two more questions here. J Penman 33 asks, "How deep are you?"
How deep am I currently? So currently, we are at low tide, mind you. I'm only 5 feet deep. So at its deepest part, the Pearl Harbor Bay is only about 40 to 45 feet. And the USS Arizona is in about 30 feet of water before you get to the silt line. And then it goes down another approximately 30 feet into the silt until it reaches hard bottom. We will get a little deeper as we move further along in our dive here today. Let's take a look at this open hatch here. You can see down inside, but you can also see that over the years, the sediment has built up. Out of the respect for all of those who have lost their lives on the USS Arizona, no diver is allowed inside of the ship. As we explore, it can be a little disorienting at times with all the twisted metal and things around you. And it takes time, especially as a new diver, to learn some landmarks along the way. Down here is actually my new favorite bottle that I found recently, just a month or so ago. You can see that there is still liquid inside of this bottle, trapped for the last 84 years. Now, when I asked about it, I was told that this bottle was found near a shaving kit. So it leads us to believe that it was some sort of hair tonic. But if you know more information or you have your own thoughts, let us know. We'd be happy to hear about it. We also have a brown bottle here, which is really impressive because you can still see the words imprinted on that glass bottle, even after all of this time. As we continue towards the bow of the ship, we'll take our time going over this next section. When I first began diving on the USS Arizona, I would dive at roughly the distance that you guys are now away from the ship. And it was kind of hard to pick out all the different things that are on the deck of the Arizona. But as you look closer, you'll start to notice familiar shapes. Bundles of wire, shelves, cabinets, day-to-day items needed for the sailors to live and work on the Arizona. Also notice a lot of marine life out today. The USS Arizona has become a natural reef, and a lot of marine life use it for protection in the harbor. Coming up here is an item that might not be immediately recognizable, but it is an item I can guarantee all of you have used at one point in time. Here we have a desk fan. And there would have been a desk fan in almost every office on the USS Arizona. And if you're having a little trouble making it out, this is the base of the fan down here. And these are the propeller blades. You can see one here, here, another one here, and here. Our current location is right behind turret number 2. Turret number 2 was salvaged during the operation, and the guns were put in place around the island of Hawaii as coastal defense. This horseshoe shape that we're approaching right now is called a gun tub. These gun tubs would have been very prevalent along each side of the ship. They housed one 5-inch gun in each one of these tubs, used for various aircraft and land or sea defenses. One thing to note on this particular gun tub is the plate coral growing on the side here. Over the last decade, the Park Service has observed substantial growth in not only plate coral, but all coral on the ship. And we hope it continues to do so as the harbor gets cleaner and cleaner as the years go on. As we make our way out of the gun tub, we're going to swim across turret number 2. we're actually going to increase our depth a little bit as well.
We have a question from the chat. Carol Phillips asks, are urns from recently deceased sailors that have survived the attack still put on the ship?
Are urns still put on the ship? Not anymore. The last survivor, when the last survivor passed away, he was the last one to be interned on the USS Arizona. We have increased our depth. We're sitting at about 15 feet currently. As we come up to this open hatch. Now this open hatch would have been right on the deck of the Arizona, open to the world, and sailors would have used this hatch to go deeper down inside of the ship. Today, the hatch is filled with sediment like much of the rest of the ship, so you wouldn't be able to go inside. But the hatch is still propped open. As we make our way to the back of turret number 1, you'll see this cylindrical shape sticking out of the side. That's actually the gun's sights. These turrets were so large that this gun sight is about the same size as me, as a 6-foot tall person. And this wall that we're coming up over the top of is actually the turret number 1. It's really hard to explain the scale and size of this turret as we swim across the top. Today, you can see a lot of marine life making home on top of turret number 1. And if you didn't know that this was a turret, you might actually think it was the deck of the Arizona. As we reach the barrels of turret number 1, you'll see this U-shaped structure, and this is what each individual gun was housed in. This space allowed the barrels of the gun to move in unison up and down. In order for the guns to turn left and right, the entire turret had to move left or right. Really gives you an idea of how big these guns really were. Before we make our swim to the muzzles of these guns, we'll take some time to answer one more question that anyone might have out there.
We have a question from Brian Mack. Is she still leaking oil?
Is the Arizona still leaking oil? Yes. The Arizona still leaks, on average, about 5 to 7 quarts of oil a day. And we can take another question as well.
Kate Wilson and her 9-year-old wants to ask, is the water toxic?
The water is not toxic. Despite that oil leaking out, the marine life and the reef on the Arizona is quite healthy. And over the years, the water in Pearl Harbor as a whole has become cleaner and cleaner. And one more question, if there is one.
Were all the munitions removed from the AZ's hold?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you repeat that question one more time?
Right. PHX Kevin asks, were all the munitions removed from the AZ's hold?
Were all the munitions removed from the AZ hold? That's a really good question, and I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you. I do know that the Navy decided to make the decision to not enter the USS Arizona, as it is a tomb for the sailors inside. So I could imagine that any munitions that didn't explode in the explosion could still be inside. But again, I'm not sure. This is a very good question. If anybody has an answer to that question, feel free to drop it in the chat for that individual. As we swim down the barrels of turret number 1, these are 52.5 feet in length. That's as long as a school bus. It's going to take us a little time to get to the muzzles. Turret number 1 wasn't salvaged by the Navy, and the Navy knew it. But due to time and kind of lost to history, that knowledge disappeared. So, when the National Park Service dove on the Arizona for the first time in 1983, they had no idea that turret 1 was still intact. So you can imagine the surprise of the NPS divers when they swam right into the muzzles of these guns. These guns shot 14-inch diameter shells 19 miles with surprising accuracy for the time. Today, the barrels of these guns provide safe haven for smaller fish and small lobsters. In fact, every time I dive on the Arizona, I take a moment to check inside these barrels and see how they're doing. Are there any other questions out there?
Mark Fuller asks, do sharks swim in that area?
Confirming yes if it's hard to swim in that area?
Sorry, do sharks swim in that area?
Do sharks swim in that area? That is a good question, one I tend not to think about. But I have been told that sharks do swim in the area. The thing that I tell myself is I generally just don't see them, since I can only see about 10 feet. Ignorance is bliss. Any other questions?
Brian asks, is it forbidden to extract artifacts from the sunken vessel?
Absolutely forbidden to extract artifacts from the sunken vessel. The National Park Service has documented the artifacts, but they do stay in place on the Arizona. These are great questions, and we definitely have time to take a couple more.
Kim Smith asks, where were the urns placed on the ship?
The urns are placed in barbette number 4 on the ship. So the USS Arizona had a total of 4 turrets, just like this one, on it. 2 of them were on the bow or the front of the ship where we are now, and the other 2 are on the back or the stern of the ship. All of those turrets and weaponry were salvaged and put back into the war effort. But in Barbette, or the base of turret number 4, that is where they put the urns. Any other questions?
What is it like for you specifically to dive on the USS Arizona?
For me specifically to dive on the USS Arizona is a really great privilege and honor. I feel very lucky to be able to be in a position where I can dive on the Arizona and help in its resource management and maintenance needs for the buoys. Excellent.
How important is it to do this dive on Memorial Day?
Say that one more time.
How important is it to do this dive on Memorial Day?
I think it's very, very important to do this dive on Memorial Day, as we remember all of the soldiers and all of the armed forces that weren't able to make it back home. I can't think of a better place to be on Memorial Day in their memory than on the USS Arizona with you guys today.
Mediocre Fox asks, how is the sediment quality?
The sediment quality is, well, it depends on where you are on the ship. Some of the sediment kind of gets blown away with the current, and you can still see the teak decking towards the stern of the ship. Our current location, the sediment quality is very temperamental. So if I were to move around or not have good fin control, I would kick up a cloud of sediment that would black all of this out.
Brian Bradford asks, how many artifacts have been documented?
How many artifacts have been documented? Hundreds. Hundreds. I couldn't tell you, but it's a lot.
Mark Fuller asks again, how many skirmishes was the Arizona in before the tragic attack?
Ask that one more time.
How many skirmishes was the Arizona in before the tragic attack?
How many skirmishes was the Arizona in? I don't know the answer to that question, I'm sorry.
All good. Charlie Bradford asks, what is the largest fish you have saw there?
The largest fish that I've seen on the Arizona has to go to a puffer fish. And believe it or not, it's about the size of my torso. It's a very, very big puffer fish. And he lives deep inside the caverns of the USS Arizona. I see him every once in a while through the hatches or the open portholes.
Cold Spirit asks, how often do you do dives on the Arizona? Great job, Andy.
How often we dive on the Arizona depends on the mission, but we like to get out here at least once a month to make sure that the deck is clear of any trash or debris that may accidentally fall off of the memorial.
All right. That was all the questions for now.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for being on this live dive with me here today. And I want to thank the National Park Service and Pacific Historic Parks for working together to make this happen.
Do we want to take another question?
If there's another question, I can take it.
Is there any UXO, left in the sediment around the Arizona?
Say that one more time.
Is there any UXO left in the sediment around the Arizona, like old IGN torpedoes or off-target bombs?
Ah, I don't know 100% what the status of unexploded ordnance is in Pearl Harbor, but I'm gonna venture probably not very many left. The Navy has done a really great job of making sure all of those are removed.
One more question here. Have you been up by the bow where the blast went upward?
Up by the bow, or
Where the blast went upward.
I have. So actually, between us here at the muzzles, off into the murky darkness, for another 30 or so feet, is where the blast breached the upper deck and ejected everything outwards. And then the decks collapsed down on top of themselves and created kind of a ramp as you go up to the bow. So like I said, we're about 21 feet right now at low tide. At high tide it'd be about 25 feet. And this kind of ramp from the collapsed deck will bring us all the way back up to 5 feet at the bow. It's a pretty significant change because of that blast.
All right. That's all the questions for now.
Great. Well, again, thank you guys so much for joining us here on the USS Arizona. Okay, topside, let's cut the feed and we will end the 2025 live dive.